The stars looked cold and empty from the bridge of the Krillian warship. Admiral Zithkar stood 8 feet tall, his black shell gleaming under the red lights. His forearms moved across control panels while his compound eyes watched dozens of screens at once. He had conquered 200 worlds in his long life. Each victory felt the same: quick, clean, final. The Krillian Dominion ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. Their ships were alive, grown from dark biometal that could heal itself and devour planets. Their warriors shared one mind, the Hive, which connected every Krillian across thousands of star systems. They felt no fear because fear was weakness. They felt no doubt because the Hive was always right. Admiral Zithkar received a message through the Hive mind. New energy readings from Sector 7 Alpha, a small spiral arm they had ignored for centuries. His second-in-command, Sub-Admiral Krextal, turned toward him. "The scouts report something strange, Admiral," Krextal said through their shared thoughts. "Unknown technology. Primitive, but different." Zithkar felt mild curiosity through the Hive connection. Different was rare. Most species followed the same patterns. They built ships, made weapons, tried to fight, then surrendered or died. The Krillians had seen it all before. "Send a patrol," Zithkar commanded. "Standard procedure." Far away, in the spiral arm called the Milky Way, Captain Jake Morrison guided his cargo ship through empty space. The vessel was old and ugly, built for carrying supplies between human colonies. Jake was 42 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in the Earth Defense War 10 years ago, but now he just wanted to make honest money moving food and medicine to frontier worlds. His ship's computer beeped. "Unknown contact approaching," it announced in a flat voice. Jake looked at his screens. A massive shape emerged from the darkness. It was unlike any human ship he had ever seen. The hull looked organic, like the shell of some giant insect. Strange lights pulsed along its surface. The ship was 10 times bigger than his cargo vessel. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the merchant ship Dakota," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Please identify yourself." The alien ship did not answer. Instead, it fired a beam of red energy that barely missed the Dakota. Jake's cargo hold filled with smoke. Emergency alarms screamed through the small bridge. Jake had seen enough alien movies to know this was not a friendly meeting. His hands moved over the controls, pushing the engines to maximum power. The Dakota was not fast, but she could still run. The alien ship followed easily. It fired again. This time the beam hit the Dakota's rear section. Jake felt the ship shake around him. His engines were dying. "Warning," his computer said. "Hull breach in sections 4 and 5. Life support failing." Jake stared at the alien ship on his screen. He thought about his daughter Amy back on Earth. She was starting college next month. He thought about the colonists on Kepler Station, who needed the medical supplies in his cargo hold. Then Jake Morrison made a choice that would change the galaxy forever. Instead of surrendering, he turned his ship around. The Dakota limped toward the massive alien vessel, her damaged engines pushing as hard as they could. Jake aimed for what looked like a weapon cluster on the alien ship's hull. "Come on, girl," he whispered to his ship. One last run. The alien ship, the Krillian patrol vessel commanded by Sub-Commander Vexmore, did not expect this response. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever attacked after being clearly defeated. The logical response was surrender, or flight. Not this. Sub-Commander Vexmore felt something strange through the Hive connection. Confusion. The small alien ship was accelerating toward them on a collision course. Its pilot must be damaged or insane. "Destroy it," Vexmore ordered, but Jake Morrison's battered cargo ship reached the Krillian vessel first. The Dakota struck the alien hull at full speed. The explosion lit up the darkness of space for several seconds. Both ships were destroyed. Sub-Commander Vexmore died instantly, but his final thoughts reached the Hive. Confusion. Questions. The small alien had chosen destruction over surrender. Why? The Hive had no answer. 3 star systems away, Dr. Lisa Chen worked in her laboratory on Research Station Omega. She was studying radio signals from deep space when her equipment detected the energy burst from the battle. Lisa was 35 years old, brilliant and curious about everything in the universe. Her computers analyzed the explosion's energy signature. Most of it matched unknown technology, powerful, advanced, unlike anything humans had built. But, mixed in with the alien energy patterns, she found traces of human fusion reactors and hull metal. "Computer, run a probability analysis," Lisa said. "What are the chances this was a human ship?" 93% probability, the computer replied. Lisa felt cold fear in her stomach. A human ship had exploded fighting something alien, something powerful. She immediately sent a message to Earth Defense Command, marked urgent priority. Light years away, in the dark center of the galaxy, Hive Queen Velthara received Vexmore's final memories. She was ancient beyond human understanding, her consciousness spread across 1,000,000 Krillian minds. The Queen had overseen the conquest of countless worlds and the extinction of hundreds of species, but Sub-Commander Vexmore's death confused her. The small alien ship had not tried to escape. It had not sent surrender signals. Instead, its pilot had chosen mutual destruction. This behavior made no sense to the hive mind. "Investigate," the Queen commanded across the mental network that connected all Krillians. "Learn about these humans." The response came from Admiral Zith Kar. "Shall we prepare standard conquest protocols, my queen?" Hive Queen Velthara considered the question. Standard protocols had worked for 3 millennia. Send overwhelming force, demonstrate superior power, demand surrender. Those who submitted lived as slaves. Those who resisted died quickly. Yes, she decided. Begin with their home system. These humans will learn to fear us like all the others. But the Queen was wrong. Humans were different from every species the Krillians had ever conquered. They had something the hive mind could not understand. The willingness to die for strangers, to sacrifice everything for people they would never meet. Captain Jake Morrison was dead, but his choice would echo across the galaxy. He had shown the universe's most powerful predators something they had never seen before, something that would eventually bring down their entire empire. The war between humanity and the Krillian Dominion was about to begin. It would not be won with bigger ships or better weapons. It would be won with the one thing the Krillians had given up long ago to become strong. It would be won with individual courage and the choice to protect others even when victory seemed impossible. General Rick Carter stood in the war room deep beneath Earth's surface. The walls showed star maps of human space, 47 colonies spread across 12 light years. It seemed so small compared to the galaxy. Rick was 58 years old, with silver hair and scars from the Mars Rebellion. He had spent his whole life preparing for war, but never one like this. "Show me the data again," Rick told his aide. Lieutenant Cole activated the holographic display. It showed Dr. Lisa Chen's analysis of the explosion 3 weeks ago, energy patterns from an unknown technology, radioactive traces that could only come from human fusion reactors. Captain Jake Morrison's cargo ship Dakota was 3 days overdue from her supply run to the outer colonies. "Sir," Lieutenant Cole said quietly, long-range sensors detected movement in the Vega system. Multiple large objects on approach vector to human space. Rick felt his stomach tighten. The aliens were coming. Across the building, Ambassador Nina Rodriguez prepared for the most important conversation in human history. Nina was 41 years old, born in Mexico City, educated at Harvard and Oxford. She had negotiated peace treaties, trade agreements, and territorial disputes, but she had never tried to talk to creatures from another star. Nina practiced her speech in front of a mirror. Her words had to be perfect. Humanity's survival might depend on them. "We come in peace," she said to her reflection. "We seek understanding between our peoples. We offer knowledge, culture, and friendship." The words sounded hollow even to her. How do you negotiate with beings who could cross interstellar space? What could Earth offer to creatures with such advanced technology? In the asteroid belt, Commander Ben Phillips watched his stealth ships prepare for launch. Ben was 34 years old, a pilot since he was 18. His experimental fleet was humanity's newest weapon, small ships designed to avoid detection, rather than fight directly. "Remember," Ben told his squadron leaders, "we're not trying to win a battle. We're trying to learn how they fight. Get close, record everything, and get home alive." His pilots nodded. They all knew this was probably a suicide mission. Human stealth technology had never been tested against alien sensors. The Krillian fleet arrived at the edge of human space like a plague of metal locusts. Warrior Prime Kethnis commanded the invasion force from his bioship Devourer. He was 200 years old, veteran of 50 conquests. To him, this was just another routine extermination. Kethnis studied the tactical display. The human star system contained one habitable planet, several mining colonies, and primitive orbital defenses. Standard procedure called for a demonstration of power, followed by surrender demands. "Target the outermost colony," Kethnis ordered. "Full disintegration bombardment." The human colony on Kepler 442b was home to 8,000 people. They were miners, farmers, and researchers trying to build a new life on a distant world. The colony had basic shields and a few defense platforms, but nothing that could stop Krillian bioweapons. Colony Administrator Paul Grant was eating breakfast when the alarm started screaming. Paul was 63 years old, a former engineer, who had volunteered to help build humanity's first extrasolar colony. Through his office window, he could see strange ships descending from orbit like dark angels. "All citizens to emergency shelters," Paul announced over the colony's communication system. This is not a drill. But Paul knew the shelters would not save them. The alien ships were too big, too advanced. He opened a communication channel to Earth. "This is Administrator Grant on Kepler 442b, he said calmly. "We are under attack by unknown alien forces. We will resist as long as possible. Tell Earth. Tell them we tried to make you proud." The Krillian bombardment began 3 minutes later. Beams of energy tore through the colony's shields like paper. Buildings vaporized. The atmosphere itself began to burn. But something unexpected happened in those final minutes. Instead of panic, the colonists organized. Families helped there. Neighbors reached the shelters. Medical staff stayed at their post to treat the wounded. Security officers held defensive positions they knew were hopeless. Most surprising of all, they broadcast everything. Paul Grant kept the communication channel open so Earth could witness their last stand. He wanted humanity to see how Kepler colony chose to die. "We will not surrender," Paul said into his microphone as explosions shook the building around him. "We will not beg. We are human, and we die free." The transmission ended when the colony administration building was vaporized. On Earth, Ambassador Nina Rodriguez watched the broadcast with tears in her eyes. Around her, military officers and government officials sat in stunned silence. 8,000 people had just died, and their killers had not even tried to communicate first. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," Nina ordered. The response came immediately. A voice spoke through their communication system, cold, mechanical, translated by some kind of universal device. "I am Warrior Prime Kethnis of the Krillian Dominion. Your species will surrender unconditionally or face complete extermination. You have one solar rotation to decide." Nina stepped forward. "I am Ambassador Nina Rodriguez, representing the government of Earth and all human colonies. We request peaceful negotiations. We can offer technology, culture, resources." "Silence," Kethnis interrupted. "The Krillian Dominion does not negotiate with inferior species. Submit or die." The communication channel closed. General Rick Carter joined Nina in the command center. "Well, Ambassador, I think they made their position clear." Nina wiped her eyes. "They're not even curious about us. They've already decided we don't matter." "Then we'll have to change their minds," Rick said grimly. In space, Commander Ben Phillips led his stealth squadron toward the alien fleet. His ships were invisible to human sensors, but who knew what the aliens could detect? Ben's heart pounded as they approached the massive bioships. "Holy Mother of God," whispered Lieutenant Amy Chen, Ben's wingman. "Look at the size of those things." The Krillian ships were like nothing human imagination had conceived. They pulsed with organic life, their hulls breathing like skin. Weapon clusters opened and closed like mouths. The fleet looked less like machines and more like a school of metal sharks. "Remember the mission," Ben told his pilots. "Get close, record their technology, find weaknesses." But as they watched, something strange happened. The alien fleet began broadcasting something toward Earth. Not words, but images. Video recordings. Of other worlds they had conquered. Hundreds of different alien species, all defeated, all enslaved or extinct. "They're showing us what happens to species that resist them," Ben realized. The images were designed to break human morale. Burning cities, surrendering armies, entire populations forced into slavery. The message was clear. This is your future. But the Krillians had made a mistake. They assumed humans would react like every other species they had conquered. They expected fear, despair, surrender. Instead, General Rick Carter watched the images and felt something else entirely. Anger. These creatures had destroyed dozens of civilizations. They had turned conquest into an art form. They killed for pleasure and profit. "How many worlds?" Rick asked his intelligence officer. "Based on these images, at least 200 confirmed conquests over the past 3,000 years, sir." Rick nodded slowly. "Then it's time someone stopped them." On the bridge of the Devourer, Warrior Prime Kethnus waited for humanity's inevitable surrender. Every species broke eventually. Some took longer than others, but they all ended the same way. On their knees, begging for mercy. The Krillians would never give. But as the deadline approached, something unprecedented happened. Instead of surrender, Earth broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. Ambassador Nina Rodriguez appeared on every frequency, her words transmitted across light years of space. "To all species, all worlds, all civilizations that can hear this message, we are humanity. We have just learned that our galaxy contains monsters who destroy worlds for sport. They have shown us the fate of hundreds of conquered peoples. They demand our surrender." Nina paused, looking directly into the camera. "Our answer is no. We choose to stand and fight, not just for ourselves, but for every species that came before us, and every species that might come after. If we must die, we will die fighting. And maybe someday someone will avenge us all." The transmission ended. Warrior Prime Kethnus felt something through the hive connection he had never experienced before. Confusion. This was not how conquests were supposed to work. The humans had seen overwhelming force and chosen death over submission. Through the galaxy on 100 enslaved worlds, alien slaves heard Nina's message and felt something they had almost forgotten. Hope. The war was about to begin, and for the first time in 3,000 years, the Krillian Dominion faced an enemy that refused to be afraid. Colonel Sarah Mitchell crouched in the ventilation shaft of a Krillian bioship, sweat dripping down her face. Around her, 5 special operations soldiers moved like ghosts through the alien vessel's living corridors. Sarah was 36 years old, trained in every form of warfare humans had invented, but nothing had prepared her for fighting inside a ship that was literally alive. The walls pulsed with a slow heartbeat. Strange fluids dripped from organic conduits. The air smelled like rotting meat and ozone. Worst of all, Sarah could feel the ship watching them through hidden sensors that looked like eyes. "Target is 2 levels down," whispered Sergeant Mike Torres through their communication link. 73 alien prisoners from the Zelak homeworld. Sarah nodded. This was their 15th rescue mission in 3 months. Humanity had given up trying to fight the Krillian fleet directly. Instead, they focused on something the aliens never expected: saving their victims. Every Krillian ship carried slaves from conquered worlds. Most species assumed these prisoners were lost forever. Humans disagreed. The team moved deeper into the ship. They passed chambers filled with alien creatures in metal cages. Beings with scales, feathers, fur, and skin colors ranging from blue to purple to silver. All of them had given up hope long ago. Sarah's team reached the prison level without triggering alarms. The Krillians never expected enemies to board their ships just to rescue strangers. It made no tactical sense. "Charges set," reported Corporal Lisa Wang. 60 seconds to breach. Sarah activated her emergency beacon. Somewhere in space, a human rescue ship waited for their signal. The mission was simple: get the prisoners out alive, even if it cost human lives. The explosions tore through the ship's hull. Alarms screamed through the biovessel as atmosphere rushed out into space. Sarah's team grabbed the alien prisoners and ran for the breach. Most of the aliens were too weak to understand what was happening. They had been slaves so long they could not imagine freedom. But as human soldiers carried them to safety, something changed in their eyes. "Why?" gasped one of the Zelek prisoners in broken universal language. "Why do you risk your lives for us?" Sarah helped the alien through the escape tunnel. "Because nobody deserves to be a slave," she said simply. On Earth, Dr. Alan Webb studied video recordings of Krillian behavior patterns. Alan was 51 years old, a psychologist who specialized in hostile negotiation. The government had asked him to find the enemy's weaknesses. What he discovered changed everything. "They don't understand individual sacrifice," Alan explained to General Carter. "Every decision they make is based on collective benefit. When a human dies to save strangers, it breaks their ability to predict our actions." Alan showed Rick a video from their latest rescue mission. A Krillian commander stood frozen as human soldiers ran past him carrying alien prisoners. The enemy warrior could have easily killed them all, but he did nothing. He couldn't process what he was seeing, Alan continued. In Krillian logic, those humans should have been trying to save themselves, not alien strangers. It created a mental error in their shared consciousness. General Carter leaned back in his chair. "So, our best weapon against them is being human." "Exactly. We need to do more things that make no sense to them. More rescue missions. More sacrifices for people we've never met. More proof that individual choice matters more than collective survival." In her laboratory, Tech Sergeant Maya Patel worked on humanity's strangest weapon. Maya was 28 years old, a computer specialist who understood both human networks and alien technology. She had spent months studying captured Krillian biocomputers. "Computer virus complete," Maya announced to her team. "But it's not designed to damage their systems." Her assistant, Corporal Tony Kim, looked confused. "Then, what does it do?" Maya smiled. "It forces their collective consciousness to experience human memories, individual thoughts, personal emotions, things that shouldn't exist in their shared mind." The virus contained thousands of recordings from human volunteers, parents talking about their children, soldiers explaining why they joined the military, scientists describing their curiosity about the universe, artists discussing their need to create beauty. When they try to delete the virus, it spreads deeper into their network, Maya explained. Eventually, individual Krillians will start thinking thoughts that aren't shared with the collective. They'll experience what it's like to be alone inside their own minds. The plan was brilliant and terrifying. Maya's virus wouldn't destroy the Krillian hive mind. It would give individual Krillians the choice to leave it. Across the galaxy, news of human rescue missions spread through the slave populations of a dozen worlds. Species that had surrendered long ago began to remember what freedom felt like. Some started sabotaging their Krillian masters. Others simply stopped working efficiently. On the Thrakari homeworld, blue-skinned aliens who had served the Dominion for 800 years gathered in secret meetings. "The humans are real," whispered Elder Zentar to his followers. "They fight, not for conquest, but to protect the weak. Perhaps resistance is possible." Similar conversations happened on mining worlds, factory planets, and agricultural colonies throughout Krillian space. The slaves began to hope again. Sub-Commander Thexoral felt the change through the hive connection. He was young for a Krillian, only 50 years old, and had known nothing but certainty his entire life. The hive told him what to think, what to feel, what to do. Individual opinions were inefficient and dangerous. But now, strange thoughts crept into his mind. thoughts that seemed to come from nowhere. What if the humans were right? What if individual life had value beyond collective benefit? What if the slaves they captured deserved freedom? Thexoral tried to push these thoughts away, but they grew stronger each day. Worse, he began to enjoy having private thoughts that belonged only to him. Admiral Zythkar noticed the problem first. Reports from across the fleet described unusual behavior. Krillian soldiers hesitating during battles. Officers asking questions instead of following orders. Some warriors even refusing to kill human prisoners. The contamination is spreading, Zythkar reported to Hive Queen Velthara. These humans have infected our forces with individuality. The Queen's response came through the mental network like ice water. Impossible. Krillians cannot think individually. We evolved beyond such weakness millennia ago. But even as she spoke, Velthara felt cracks in her perfect control. Somewhere in the Hive network, thousands of small voices were learning to speak for themselves. The worst example came from the prison ship Fleshrender. Captain Vorthak had commanded the vessel for 60 years, processing slaves from conquered worlds. His record was perfect. No escapes, no rebellions, maximum efficiency. But when human special forces boarded his ship to rescue Andromedan prisoners, something unprecedented happened. Captain Vorthak watched the humans die protecting alien strangers, and for the first time in his life he felt doubt. Why did these humans value alien lives more than their own? What did they gain from such sacrifice? The questions burned in his mind like acid. When the rescue was over, 17 humans were dead. They had saved 43 Andromedans they had never met before. From a Krillian perspective, it was the worst possible trade. But Captain Vorthak could not stop thinking about the last human soldier. Sergeant Emma Davis had used her own body to shield an alien child from gunfire. As she died, she smiled at the child and whispered, "You're safe now." The memory played over and over in Vorthak's consciousness. It made no sense. It served no purpose. It benefited no one. So why did it make him feel proud? That night, Captain Vorthak did something that violated 3,000 years of Krillian doctrine. He temporarily disconnected from the Hive network and thought his own thoughts. For the first time in his life, he was alone inside his own mind. It was terrifying, but it was also wonderful. Similar awakenings happened throughout the Krillian fleet. Maya Patel's virus spread through their networks, carrying human memories and emotions to beings who had never experienced individual choice. Some Krillians fought the contamination, clinging to collective safety. Others embraced it, discovering the joy and terror of being truly alive. Admiral Zythkar watched his empire begin to crack from within. The humans had not defeated them with superior weapons or larger armies. They had done something far more dangerous. They had taught the Krillians how to be individuals, and for the first time in 3 millennia, Krillians began to experience fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of being alone with their own thoughts and choices. The galaxy's most powerful predators were learning what it meant to be human. Some would embrace the change, others would fight it with desperate fury, but none of them would ever be the same. President Elena Martinez stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Communications Council. Elena was 48 years old, the former governor of California, who had become Earth's leader during humanity's darkest hour. Behind her, holographic displays showed the truth that would shake the galaxy to its core. "My fellow beings," Elena said, addressing representatives from 23 alien species. "Today I share with you the greatest discovery in galactic history. The Krillian Dominion, which has terrorized our galaxy for 3,000 years, is built on a lie," the alien delegates whispered among themselves. Most of them came from species that had surrendered to the Krillians long ago. They served the Dominion now, believing resistance was impossible. Dr. Julie Kim stepped forward to present her research. Julie was 39 years old, a brilliant scientist who had spent months studying captured Krillian biotechnology and ancient galactic records. "The Krillians were not always a collective species," Julie explained. "Our archaeological evidence shows they were once individuals, just like us. They had families, personal relationships, individual dreams, and fears. The holographic display showed ancient Krillian artifacts, art, music, personal writings, all evidence of a species that had once celebrated individual achievement and personal expression. But 8,000 years ago, their homeworld faced a catastrophe, Julie continued. A plague that killed 90% of their population. The survivors made a desperate choice. They merged their consciousness into a collective mind to ensure their species' survival. President Martinez took over the presentation. They gave up their individuality to become strong. They abandoned personal choice to become efficient. They sacrificed their humanity to become conquerors. The final hologram showed the most shocking discovery of all. Deep in Krillian genetic memory, buried beneath millennia of collective conditioning, was the truth they had tried to forget. They were afraid, not afraid of death or pain or defeat. They were afraid of being alone, afraid of making decisions without the collective to guide them, afraid of failing as individuals. The galaxy's greatest predators, Elena said quietly, are actually the galaxy's greatest cowards. Captain Tim Brooks listened to the president's speech from the bridge of the battlecruiser Defiance. Tim was 43 years old, a career naval officer who commanded humanity's last major battle fleet. His mission was not to attack Krillian worlds, but to broadcast President Martinez's revelation throughout their territory. All stations prepare for transmission, Tim ordered. Full spectrum broadcast on all Krillian frequencies. The truth spread across Krillian space like wildfire. On 100 worlds, slaves heard the recordings and understood for the first time what their masters truly were. The invincible dominion was built on fear and collective weakness disguised as strength. But the broadcast had an even more powerful effect on the Krillians themselves. Sub-Commander Thex Oral, who now called himself simply Thex, stood in his private quarters aboard the warship Bone Crusher. He had disconnected from the Hive network permanently 3 weeks ago, becoming the first Krillian in millennia to live as a true individual. The loneliness was terrible. Without the constant mental connection to millions of other minds, Thex felt isolated and afraid. But he also felt something wonderful: freedom. When President Martinez's broadcast reached his ship, Thex understood the final piece of the puzzle. His people had not evolved beyond individuality. They had run away from it. Computer, Thex said to his ship's biosystem, open a communication channel to the human fleet. The ship's living circuits hesitated. This violated every protocol in Krillian military doctrine. This is Thexoral, formerly sub-commander of the Krillian Dominion, he broadcast on human frequencies. I wish to defect. I want to help you free my people from their own fear. Captain Brooks nearly fell out of his command chair when the message came through. A Krillian officer was surrendering? It seemed impossible. This could be a trap, warned his tactical officer, Commander Janet Stone. Tim nodded. Maybe. But what if it's not? What if this is exactly what we've been fighting for? He opened a return channel. This is Captain Brooks of the Earthship Defiance. If you're serious about defecting, prove it. Help us rescue the prisoners on the slave ship Marrow Feeder. Thex felt fear and excitement war in his chest. The Marrow Feeder was commanded by Captain Skelton, one of the most loyal Krillians in the fleet. Helping humans attack it would be treason against everything Thex had believed his entire life. Agreed, he replied. I will provide you with the ship's defensive frequencies and patrol schedules. The rescue mission launched 6 hours later. Thex guided human special forces through the slave ship's defenses, his hands shaking as he betrayed his former comrades. But when he saw the human soldiers risk their lives to save alien prisoners, he knew he had made the right choice. Across the galaxy, other individual Krillians began to emerge. They called themselves the Awakened, beings who had chosen personal freedom over collective security. Most were young like Thex. The older Krillians found it harder to break free from millennia of shared consciousness. Admiral Zythkar felt the crisis growing worse each day. His fleet was falling apart as individual commanders began questioning orders, making personal decisions, even refusing to attack certain targets. "The contamination must be stopped," he reported to Hive Queen Velthara. "We need to purge all infected units." But the Queen's response surprised him. For the first time in centuries, she sounded uncertain. "Admiral," she said slowly, "I have been studying the human psychological data. Their ability to sacrifice. For strangers, their willingness to die for abstract concepts like freedom. It makes them unpredictable, dangerous." Zithkar felt confusion through their mental link. "Then we destroy them completely. Total extermination protocols." "But what if we are wrong?" the Queen asked. "What if their way of thinking is not a weakness, but a strength? What if individuality is not inefficient, but valuable?" The question hit Zithkar like a physical blow. The Hive Queen was experiencing doubt. Individual thought. The most powerful Krillian in the galaxy was becoming infected with humanity's disease. On Earth, General Rick Carter coordinated the new galactic resistance. Species that had been enslaved for centuries were rising against their Krillian masters. The rebellion was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. "Confirmed uprisings on 47 worlds," reported his intelligence chief, Colonel Dana Price. "The Zelak have liberated 3 star systems. The Andromedans have rebuilt their fleet. Even the Thrakari are fighting back." Rick smiled grimly. The Krillians created this problem themselves. They kept all these species alive as slaves instead of exterminating them. Now their former victims are becoming our allies. But the most important ally was Thex. The former Krillian officer had become humanity's window into enemy psychology. He helped them understand how the collective mind worked, and more importantly, how to break it. "The key is individual choice," Thex explained to a room full of human officers. "Every Krillian who experiences personal decision-making becomes contaminated. They cannot return to pure collective thought." President Martinez asked the crucial question: how do we give them that choice without forcing it on them? Thex was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, an expression that looked strange on a Krillian face. "We show them what they gave up," he said. "Art, music, love, personal relationships, all the things that make life worth living as an individual." The plan that emerged was unlike anything in military history. Instead of attacking Krillian worlds with weapons, humanity would attack them with culture. Captain Brooks led the mission personally. His ship, the Defiance, approached the Krillian industrial world of Kethmore. Instead of firing weapons, they began broadcasting. Human music filled the planet's communication networks. Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, jazz from New Orleans, rock concerts from London, lullabies that mothers sang to their children. They broadcast human art, paintings by Van Gogh and Picasso, sculptures by Michelangelo, photographs of Earth's natural beauty. Most importantly, they broadcast human stories, personal accounts of love, loss, hope, and triumph. Individual humans talking about what made their lives meaningful. On the planet's surface, millions of Krillian workers stopped their tasks to listen. Many had never heard music before. None had ever seen art created by individuals for personal expression rather than collective benefit. For the first time in millennia, Krillians began to cry. Admiral Zithkar watched his empire crumble from within. Planets were surrendering without a fight. His own officers were asking questions instead of following orders. Some were even requesting to speak with human diplomats about individual rights. But the worst moment came when he received a personal message from Captain Vorthak, his most trusted subordinate. "Admiral," Vorthak said, his mental voice strange and distant, "I can no longer serve the collective. I have learned what it means to think for myself, and I will not give up this gift. I am joining the humans." Zithkar felt something break inside his mind. If Vorthak could abandon the hive, then anyone could. The collective was no longer absolute. For the first time in his life, Admiral Zithkar experienced true terror. Not fear of death, but fear of being alone with his own thoughts and choices. Admiral Zithkar stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, surrounded by empty stations. Half his crew had defected to join the human-led resistance. The other half had disconnected from the hive network and refused to follow orders they did. not personally believe in. For the first time in his 200-year life, Zithkar was making decisions without the collective consciousness to guide him. The experience was terrifying. Every choice felt wrong because he had never learned to trust his own judgment. His communication system activated. A human voice spoke through the speakers. "Admiral Zithkar, this is Captain Lisa Anderson of the diplomatic vessel Hope. I request permission to come aboard." Zithkar's forearms trembled as he reached for the controls. The logical response was to destroy the human ship immediately. But logic no longer felt certain to him. "Why?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Because I think you're afraid," Captain Anderson replied gently. "And being afraid doesn't have to mean being alone." Lisa Anderson was 37 years old, a former military pilot who had become humanity's chief negotiator with the awakened Krillians. She had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history, attempting to negotiate directly with the enemy's supreme commander. 20 minutes later, Lisa stood in the flagship's docking bay, wearing only a basic environmental suit. She was surrounded by Krillian warriors who could have killed her instantly, but she showed no fear. "I am unarmed," she announced. "I come to offer you a choice." Admiral Zithkar met her in what had once been the ship's collective meditation chamber. The room had been designed for shared consciousness, but now it felt empty and hollow. The Admiral looked older than his years, his black carapace dull with exhaustion. "You have destroyed everything," he said bitterly. 3,000 years of order, 3,000 years of strength, gone because of your species' madness. Lisa sat down across from him, a tiny human facing a towering alien warlord. "We didn't destroy anything, Admiral. We just reminded you what you chose to forget." She activated a portable holographic projector. Images filled the air between them, the ancient Krillian artifacts Dr. Julie Kim had discovered. Art, music, and personal writings from before the collective was formed. "These were created by your ancestors," Lisa said softly. "Individual Krillians who thought their own thoughts, felt their own emotions, made their own choices. You didn't evolve beyond individuality. You ran away from it because you were afraid." Zithkar stared at the images. Somewhere deep in his genetic memory, he recognized them. Personal expression, individual creativity, the freedom to fail or succeed on your own merits. "We had to survive," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "The collective made us strong." "The collective made you efficient," Lisa corrected. "But strength isn't the same as power over others. Real strength is the courage to be vulnerable, to risk failure, to care about strangers even when it costs you everything." She showed him videos from the human rescue missions. Soldiers dying to save alien slaves they had never met. Parents sacrificing their lives to protect children who were not their own. "This is what we're offering you, Admiral. Not surrender, but partnership. Not submission, but friendship between equals." Zithkar felt something crack inside his consciousness. For just a moment, he imagined what it would be like to choose his own path, to make decisions based on personal conviction rather than collective programming. "I don't know how to be individual," he whispered. Lisa smiled. "None of us do at first. That's what makes it an adventure." Across the galaxy, the war between collective and individual spread to every Krillian world. But it was not fought with weapons. It was fought with ideas, art, music, and the simple concept that every being had the right to choose their own destiny. On the Krillian homeworld, Hive Queen Velthara felt her empire dissolving around her. Millions of Krillians had disconnected from the collective network. They formed independent communities, learned to make personal relationships, even began creating art and music of their own. The Queen was alone now, cut off from the vast consciousness that had defined her existence for 4 millennia. The silence in her mind was deafening. A message arrived from the human fleet. President Elena Martinez requested a meeting. "Why should I speak with you?" Velthara broadcast back. "You have destroyed my empire." President Martinez's response came immediately. "Because your empire was built on fear, and I think you're tired of being afraid." The meeting took place on a neutral space station, constructed jointly by humans and awakened Krillians. Velthara arrived with only a small escort, her ancient form moving slowly through corridors designed for multiple species. President Martinez waited in a simple conference room. Beside her sat Thex, the first Krillian to choose individual freedom. His presence was both a betrayal and a hope. "Your Majesty," Elena said, standing to greet the former queen, "thank you for coming." Velthara's compound eyes studied the human leader. "I am no longer a queen. My subjects have chosen to abandon me." "They didn't abandon you," Thex said quietly. "They chose to join you as equals instead of serving you as subjects." The conversation that followed lasted 18 hours. Velthara spoke of the ancient catastrophe that had driven her people to collectivism. The fear, the desperation, the terrible choice to sacrifice individuality for survival. President Martinez listened without judgment. "You made the best decision you could with the information you had. But that crisis ended 8,000 years ago. Maybe it's time to try a different way." "What if we fail?" Velthara asked. "What if individual Krillians cannot survive without the collective?" "Then you'll fail as individuals," Elena said simply. "And that's your right. The freedom to fail is just as important as the freedom to succeed." Slowly, carefully, the former Hive Queen began to understand. The collective had kept her people alive, but it had also kept them from truly living. "What do you propose?" she asked. Elena smiled. "A new galactic alliance, not based on conquest or submission, but on cooperation between free peoples, humans, Krillians, and all the species your former empire enslaved working together as equals." The negotiations took months. Not every Krillian chose to leave the collective. Some preferred the safety of shared consciousness. Not every former slave species forgave their oppressors immediately. But gradually, a new order emerged. Admiral Zethkar became the first Krillian to serve in the Galactic Protection Alliance. His job was not to conquer worlds, but to protect them from the few remaining collective holdouts who still believed in the old ways. The adjustment was difficult. Zithkar made mistakes, questioned his own decisions, sometimes felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of individual choice, but he also experienced joy, wonder, and the deep satisfaction of achieving something through personal effort rather than collective efficiency. Thex established the first mixed human Krillian colony on a world called New Freedom. Humans and individual Krillians worked together, learned from each other, and proved that former enemies could become friends. Children grew up on New Freedom never knowing that Krillians and humans had once been at war. They played together, studied together, and dreamed of exploring the galaxy as partners rather than conquerors. Former Hive Queen Velthara spent her remaining years writing, not collective proclamations or tactical reports, but personal memoirs about her journey from absolute ruler to individual being. Her writings became required reading for anyone studying the transformation of galactic civilization. In her final book, she wrote, "I ruled 1,000,000 worlds and commanded billions of beings, but I was never truly alive until I learned to be alone, with my own thoughts. The humans did not defeat the Krillian Dominion with superior weapons. They defeated us with something far more powerful, the courage to be individuals in a universe that often punishes individual choice." President Martinez aged in office, but lived to see the signing of the Galactic Freedom Charter. Representatives from 400 species gathered to pledge that never again would any civilization be enslaved or exterminated for the crime of being different. The ceremony took place on Earth, in a great hall built to accommodate beings of all sizes and biologies. When Martinez signed the charter with Admiral Zithkar and former Queen Velthara as witnesses, the galaxy finally had a chance for lasting peace. Captain Lisa Anderson, now an admiral herself, commanded the mixed species fleet that patrolled the Outer Rim, ensuring that new civilizations developing space travel would be greeted with friendship rather than conquest. Her ship, the New Dawn, carried a crew of humans, individual Krillians, freed slaves from dozens of species, and young beings who had never known the fear of conquest. They explored unknown regions not to claim territory, but to make contact with new friends. 100 years after the first encounter between Jake Morrison and the Krillian Patrol, children across the galaxy learned about the war in their history classes. They studied how fear and collective thinking had created the galaxy's greatest tyranny, and how individual courage and the willingness to sacrifice for strangers had brought it down. The Krillian Dominion was remembered not as an evil empire, but as a species that found the strength to overcome their greatest fear, the fear of being alone with their own choices.